The next lecture of Tobias will start in 5 minutes, and it will be not quicker than that because we need to live stream. So we know from Leonard that our rivers are traded as a source of energy. So I hope Tobias will show us, will explain us from his knowledge and experience what we as society, a diverse society, I mean, not only ordinary people, what do we expect from our rivers? And what kind of investments, if any, we can allow on them.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me for a presentation at the River University, which I misspelled in my first slide. I apologize. So missing an S. Yes, Eva, thank you very much for inviting me. And as you said, the title of the presentation is "What do we expect our rivers to look like?" And thank you very much for choosing that title, because it gives me sort of some freedom to wander about a little bit. I will include in the film in the presentation, of course, slides, and there are also 3 short films that hopefully will work technically to illustrate 3 views on what rivers might look like. Okay, let me introduce myself very briefly. Since I see no comments, I hope everything is working fine technically. My name is Tobias Schäfer. I'm from Berlin in Germany, and I work for Leibniz Institute of Freshwater Ecology and Inland Fisheries. In short, that's IGB Berlin, a quite large scientific institute where I am focusing on urban waters. My own background, though, is not ecology, but rather environmental planning and landscape architecture. I am also engaging in civil society action, and I represent Living Rivers Foundation in the European Environmental Bureau, the EEB, based in Brussels. And I've been a member of that working group for almost 20 years now. So I've been working on river basin management and the policies that shape that. And most recently, I changed into the scientific institution. And I would like to reflect on the question on this first slide. And let's go into the, doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Into the outline. Please also have a look at the picture. That's a river. That's a real river. It's the Willamette River in Oregon, seen from above, and you see the river basically in space and time. Maybe that's what a river is all about. So I would like to outline what I will be talking about. Rivers are flow. Rivers are meant to flow. And I will reflect shortly on what do we want to protect if we want to protect rivers, or restore when we restore rivers. Then there is a focus, a chapter on hydropower and inland navigation as pressures, and what pressures do we want to defend our rivers against, possibly. I'll also include some, this will not be so technical as it sounds maybe. I will briefly refer to a study that I did last year on legal protection schemes for free-flowing rivers, and also talk a little bit about a vision that there could be a growing network of strictly protected rivers, wild rivers that are still there, and rivers where dam removal recreates river health. And there is a great push for such an idea through the new EU biodiversity strategy, with its goal of 25,000 kilometers of rivers being restored to free-flowing condition. Altogether, my aim in some of the work I do is to basically change our perception, my own perception, and to reflect on my perception, change the conversation about rivers, because I think we've, in Central Europe, in Germany for sure, lost the idea of what a wild, what a free-flowing, what a dynamic and natural river really is as a system. And I think it is very important to make connections to places and processes where you can still see that. And film, in my experience, is a very great way of making these connections and invite people to sit in front of a screen, see the films, and discuss serious questions. Okay, that was a bit long for an introduction, but now we're all the way into it. Protecting rivers is about river health, river dynamics, and river flow. So these are, I think, the essential three things that make a river a river. The essential property is the flow of water and the flow of sediment. And through its dynamics, the river provides connectivity in all dimensions. So connectivity is a horrible word, I think, but it's a great concept. Connectivity means, if you will, it means up and down, back and forth, left and right, yesterday and today. The river is in spatial and temporal ways connected to its surroundings, and that's the essential quality that river systems provide as corridors across the land, connecting the mountains to the sea. Rivers are dynamic, and the river dynamics are shaped by the energy of the flowing water. So the morphodynamics are fluvial morphodynamics, pushing the sediment back and forth, and the river's ability to constantly renew itself, to shape its bed, its banks, and its floodplains is what is essential. And of course, rivers are full of life, teeming with life, and freshwater biodiversity is concentrated in river systems and is both the most, in a way, dense and rich. Rivers are the most biodiverse habitats on Earth, and the ones with the sharpest decline of biodiversity. Very alarming, as recently pointed out in the WWF Living Planet Report 2020. So, in summary, protecting the pathways rivers create and allowing the river to renew itself. This is what river conservation is all about. Yeah, I think Leonard referred to that picture. This is from Norway. This is eel found near a power station, hydropower station. And this is also, in a way, a metaphor for what we do with the river systems themselves. We're chopping them into pieces, and that's one of the main aspects that cause trouble for freshwater biodiversity. Freshwater biodiversity is in crisis, and you probably know the famous graph from Rockström and others from the planetary boundaries concept. On the left, you see the wedges that are red are climate crisis, nitrogen cycle, but most importantly, biodiversity loss. That is, although we know the others are on a trajectory to become much worse, biodiversity loss at this point seems to be the most urgent problem, where we are overshooting the planetary boundaries by far the most. Europe is a hotspot of that, and a recent study by Jörg Freihoff, commissioned by Euronatur and the Blue Heart campaign, shows, for example, how hydropower is threatening freshwater fishes in the Mediterranean area, and it is a dramatic situation. Strangely, we probably wouldn't do that with terrestrial habitats and species. So these two species are both critically endangered according to IUCN. And I wonder what would happen if we would chop the gorilla in such a way. So we have a different perception of rivers and a different perception of freshwater biodiversity. And maybe that's at the heart of the problem. And I think that's something we can change. This is a fish species that is extinct. It's lost around 1940. It was lost around 1940. The North Sea Schnäpel, a whitefish. migrating into the North Sea and up into the Rhine. So it's happening at our doorstep, and it's happening right now. So let me try, this is difficult. Let me try if I can share with you the first video. It's a 3.5, I think, minute video about the Vjosa River in Albania. And this is one of the last really free-flowing from sea to source to sea in Europe. Let's see, I have to stop sharing my screen and then reshare my screen. Let's see if it works. That's good. Let me know if you cannot see the film, please.
Tobias, please. You don't have to unmute yourself, otherwise we cannot hear.
Because here we can find species.
Sorry.
Here you have an undisturbed river from the springs to the sea. The river is wild, it is free, it is open to the sides.
It's kind of paradise, that's right. Because here we can find species that we do not have so far in Central Europe.
I've been collecting around 10 years or something. In the surrounding, we have one species of plant hopper, and it's the most common species here, and I've never seen it before. You only find in rivers that are in good condition.
We don't need all these stems to make electricity. It's not necessary.
Nuk është as pak e drejtë që këtë lugin e Vjosës ta mbyt. Për faktin se lugina e Vjosës është një. Dhe ky bën një dëm gjatë parë, edhe për ne këtu, po bën dhe një dëm ekologjik shumë të madh.
Mos vjet nga dorë nga njeri, mos pushtohet nga njeri, këtë e lirë, këtë e vigjë.
I 4 tera mrekullit.
If you put in here one dam, the continuum is interrupted and the whole system is destroyed forever.
Okay, good. I'm glad that worked, and I hope you enjoyed the film. I believe that the Balkan Rivers campaign, Save the Blue Heart of Europe, really does amazing work. For one, protecting and raising awareness for the rivers in the Balkan region, but I think they also managed to really make other people in other parts of Europe rethink what rivers are and what our rivers might have been like and what we expect them maybe or hope to see them like in the future. The Vjosa was announced to really become a national park last week by the Albanian Prime Minister in a Twitter message. Let's see if that's really the case after the elections in Albania, but that's great news for rivers in Europe and really an inspiration. If you have a chance to go, please do. It's a phenomenal landscape. Good. I'll try to continue. There we go. Okay, this is, I'll be very brief on the hydropower part. This is a map, a global map of hydropower projects of large scale, just to show that this is going on in many parts of the world. And Europe is actually a hot spot. And the small map shows you recent findings of a recent study by WWF and others indicating where there are new hydropower projects. It's not only the Balkans, it's all over the place. And it's really one of the greatest threats to freshwater biodiversity. Oh my God. The slide is a little different than I had hoped. So hydropower navigation, hydropower and inland navigation are two of the main drivers of river degradation and loss of freshwater biodiversity. The negative environmental effects include, this is of course not a complete list, but it's of course fragmentation of river systems through barriers, large and small, and it's the number of barriers that makes the difference. There was a message also from the Amber Project presented at Green Week again. It's really the number of, the cumulative effect of these barriers. It's habitat loss and habitat degradation. So it's also the fact that the flow regime is altered and rivers become ponds or lakes, and then communities change, fish predation changes, as I indicated in my question in the last session. River dynamics are lost, the sediment flow is interrupted, the disconnection between river and floodplain is apparent, and when we reconnect, when we connect different water river basins, as we, for example, did with the Danube and the Rhine through the Main-Danube Canal, we are reshuffling biodiversity by connecting formerly never connected basins, and we're creating ways for invasive species. So this is really massive. And the EEB, as umbrella organization in Europe, has for many years said that infrastructure projects from navigation, hydropower, and flood protection are the ones that are driving this crisis, and we need to have different policies or apply and implement the existing policies better to protect the rivers in a way that we see them, for example, in those pictures. Well, that's rather alpine, but we'll see others later. Very importantly, I would like to stress that hydropower and navigation are not ecosystem services. They're actually the opposite of what we consider ecosystem services. Don't want to go into that, but this is, I think, a very important point to make. In short, summarizing hydropower, living rivers depend on the energy that hydropower is aiming to extract from them. That's the conflict, and that sometimes there are solutions, but that's the conflict that we're in, and there is no general compromise. It is a conflict. Okay, oh, another hydropower slide. Just an example of what is happening, in this case in Romania. This is neighboring streams in the Carpathians, both in Natura 2000 areas. Yeah, what do we want and what do we expect our rivers to look like? This is an official document trying to reconcile hydropower and river Natura 2000. Very controversial document, but just look at the cover, and I made a little quiz on the right, and I answered the questions from my perspective. What does the front page show? A hydroelectric power station? Yes. Does it show a river? I'd say no. And does it show a Natura 2000 site in favorable conservation status? I don't know. I don't think so. The EB statement on this is that there's very little scope for new hydropower in any of EU's water courses, in particular not in Natura 2000 areas. These sites should rather be the nucleus for a network of free-flowing rivers and streams with high ecological value that should be expanded through the decommissioning and removal of ecologically harmful infrastructure. And the way the hydropower sector is arguing sometimes is a little worrying, because if you look at documents like this policy report, no further comments, but just I tried to find the word fish and the word river, or in other words, they're just not appearing in a report on the sustainability of hydropower and its contribution to a prosperous future in Europe. That's alarming. Now, finally, a second film, and I wonder where we are time-wise. It's okay. This is a short impression from Belarus. It's produced by an NGO, Balna, and I have the pleasure to show you a 4-minute, 3-minute video on the Pripyat and the proposed E40 waterway. And I'm showing this especially because of the phenomenal floodplain footage, showing the interconnectedness of river and land, of water and land. Let me try to share my screen properly. No. Sorry, I made a mistake here. I hope you enjoy seeing me struggling, but I am...
Гэта Припять. Одна з самых буйных рэк Беларусі, якая цячэ па Палессі, унікальнай прыроднай тэрыторыі на поўдні краіны. Припять гэта апошняя Европе, якая захавалася ў стане блізкім да натуральнага. Яе берагі насяляюць дзесяткі рэдкіх відаў жывёл і раслін, а 1,5 мільёна птушак штогод.
I hope now you can see it, and I will go back to start.
Yes, we see.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Гэта Припять. Одна з самых буйных рэк Беларусі, якая цячэ па Палессі, унікальнай прыроднай тэрыторыі на поўдні краіны. Припять гэта апошняя вялікая рака ў Еўропе, якая захавалася ў стане блізкім да натуральнага. Яе берагі насяляюць дзесяткі рэдкіх відаў жывёл і раслін, а 1,5 мільёна птушак штогод набіраюцца сіл падчас міграцый. Але водны шлях пад назвай Е40 можа назаўсёды змяніць Припять і жыццё тых, хто звязаны з ракой. Е40 – гэта праект суднаходнай трасы, якая можа прайсці па рэках Польшчы, Беларусі і Украіны. Стваральнікі праекта называюць яе рэстаўрацыяй шляха з варагаў у грэкі, які злучаў паміж сабой парты Балтыйскага і Чорнага мораў. Варта адзначыць, што ні варагі, ні грэкі ніколі не бывалі на Припяці. Старажытны гандлёвы шлях праходзіў па заходняй Двіне і Дняпры. 500 кіламетраў Е40 можа прайсці па тэрыторыі Беларусі, большая частка з іх па Припяці. На рацэ з'явіцца 6 прапускных шлюзаў, рэчышча ракі будуць выпрастоўваць, а берагі закрыюць валамі і дамбамі. Гэта прывядзе да спынення вясновых паводак, за кошт якіх сфарміравана тая Припять, якую мы ведаем. Тая рака, што адвечна служыла багатай прыродзе Палесся і яе насельнікам. Е40 можа адмоўна паўплываць на адзін з самых каштоўных раёнаў нашай краіны. Плануецца, што ён пройдзе праз нацыянальны парк Припяцкі, Палескі радыяцыйны запаведнік, 15 прыродных заказнікаў і 12 аб'ектаў міжнароднага значэння, рамсарскія тэрыторыі і тэрыторыі важныя для птушак. У прыватнасці, Е40 парушыць цэласнасць альманскіх балотаў, самага буйнога комплексу натуральных балотаў у Еўропе. Палескія балоты называюць лёгкімі Еўропы. Яны паглынаюць у 20 разоў больш вуглякіслага газу, чым лясы. Пойму Припяці насяляюць Вялікі Арлец, Вяртлявая Чаротаўка і Драч, якія знаходзяцца пад пагрозай глобальнага знікнення. Тут жа знаходзіцца найбуйнейшая ў свеце колькасць батальёнаў – 120 000 птушак. Змена рэчышча Припяці паўплывае на рыбныя запасы ракі. Будуть вынішчаны нерасцілішча, узровень забруджвання вады павялічыцца, то бок рыбы будзе менш, чым ёсць зараз. Е-40 пройдзе па тэрыторыі Палескага радыяцыйнага запаведніка. Рачны глей – месца назапашвання велізарнай колькасці радыенуклідаў. Парушэнне запаведнага рэжыму будзе мець непрадказальныя наступствы для Беларусі і Украіны. Е-40 пройдзе праз месцы археалагічных раскопак. У прыватнасці горад Тураў – адзін з самых старажытных гарадоў Беларусі. Любыя працы ў пойме Прыпяці могуць знішчыць ужо вядомыя альбо яшчэ не адкрытыя помнікі гісторыі, што знаходзяцца на яе берагах. Давайце захаваем Прыпяць і Палессе разам з намі. Далучайцеся да кампаніі «Стоп Е-40».
Okay, I think this is just stunning footage of a phenomenal landscape. There's nothing there's nothing comparable in Germany. I heard a presentation recently where they said, well, actually the lower Havel River 100 years ago, until 100 years ago, had a slight similarity, not nearly as wide, but it was a huge floodplain that was dammed for flood control and navigation, and now there is the largest restoration project in Germany going on in the lower Havel River. But this is the reference, Pripyat is the reference, and I think everybody should go there and get their personal reference checked by looking at a river in a wild and free-flowing condition. I haven't been. I wish I can one day. Now, inland navigation in Germany, I'm referring to German examples here. My summary is it's mostly a fairy tale. This is, of course, a bit unfair, but now have a look, please, at the map to the left side, and not at the red bars, but the blue bars. The blue bars in the width indicate the shipping capacity, the real tonnage that was transported on German rivers in 2000. This is, of course, a few years ago. I'm aware this is not the most accurate and timely picture, but it hasn't really changed. And what's most important is look at the dimension. There's one chunk on the left, and that's the Rhine. And there's 80% of all inland navigation in Germany is on the Rhine. And the remaining 20% are mostly on canals, not on rivers. And maybe you have a chance to find the Elbe River. It's very hard because it's very, very feeble, because there's no shipping on it, nothing significant at least. And the Oder on the border is easier to find because we know where the border is, but it's not because there's so much shipping indicated by a blue line. Now, this made IGB in 2017 utter a statement that besides the Rhine, basically all rivers in Germany, don't serve any navigation purpose that is of great significance, and there's great potentials to ecologically improve them. I'm not exactly quoting, I put the quote here for your reference, but this is the general impression that you can get from this picture. And I think it's fair to say there's quite a difference between the Rhine and the rest of the country. Canals are important. And why is the Rhine important? Because of Rotterdam. Rotterdam is the greatest seaport. And then secondly, Germany's industry centers are centered around the Rhine, and that's why there's shipping. And in other parts of Germany, even with Hamburg, we don't see that. And Hamburg is not such a small port. Okay, ecological effects. I just jotted down one technical slide here. This shows you the Elbe River, the incision of the riverbed due to navigation, to rectification of the Elbe River channel. So every year, the Elbe River is the incision is 1 to 1.25 centimeters along a stretch of 300 kilometers of the German Elbe River. So that's a year in 100 years. So the river the river is already 1 meter deeper than it was when the navigation rectification stuff started. And this is a continuous process. So we'll be seeing another meter in another 100 years. And already now the effects on the floodplain systems are dramatic, and large forest portions are losing in summer contact to the groundwater, because the floodplain groundwater is of course connected to the flows in the Elbe River. And there is no solution apparent. We would have to give the river more sediment from tributaries or from the side. And that's not happening because of navigation, and because the other rivers, the tributaries, don't support that sediment flow. So we are in massive trouble. And all the sediment management has not made any significant difference. We're in massive trouble in this river. Okay, now a few reflections on money well spent. And this is a pretty old example. Between 1969 and 83, the Federal Republic of Germany spent 1.3 billion German marks at the time on a canal. And this canal is down there where you see the left arrow. And it is connected to the Rhine, but is of course not connected to any industry. So the evaluators summarized, and this is an article from Der Spiegel in the 80s, the evaluators summarized that water sports will cheer, as there is no other indication of other traffic. This is what we're doing. This is a cartoon, I'll skip it. So I recently looked at this canal project, and I just wanted to compare it with another one. This is why I put this slide here. I saw this website, and I thought something is wrong. If you look at the size of the ships, I think there is a recreational boat on the right and another one on the left. In the middle, there is a freight ship, and it's definitely too small. It must be, it should be, I think, twice as large. That's my impression. Also, if you compare it to the road and to the trees, it's a bit weird. So there is an expectation of a river that is maybe an image just rather than reality. And the same website indicates that they compare their project to the Panama Canal and the Rhine-Main-Danube Canal in Germany. And for that, I can quote Süddeutsche Zeitung from 2017, summarizing Main-Danube Canal, a complete failure economically. And the image is entitled, it's a rather rare sight, a freight ship on the Main-Danube Canal, because also there it's mainly recreational use and cruise ships, I mean tourist cruises, river cruises. Okay, so these ideas come from a time that is quite some time ago. This is a map from 1903, and it includes phenomenal projects between the Main and the Main, connecting the same river with itself. And okay, but I shouldn't go into detail here. For Germany's famous Main-Donau Canal, my summary is, it is a bit like Pirate Jenny in the 3-penny opera, but it's rather a 3 to 25 penny opera, because it was quite expensive. There is this kitchen maid that dreams of this ship that one day will take her with, will be at the harbor, and she'll be able to leave that town. And it's Pirate Jenny, and of course that ship never comes. But it's a ship with 8 sails shining and 55 cannons wide, sir. It waits there at the quay. I put a link here if you want to hear Marianne Faithfull sing it, and another link where you see a almost frightening resemblance to that situation. When the canal was opened, you see people shooting some small cannons, and one ship is actually coming. Okay, enough of that. I would like to come to a different chapter of the talk. The EU Biodiversity Strategy 2030 is offering a great perspective for river restoration. There's an own chapter on restoring freshwater ecosystem. That's phenomenal. It's never been as articulate, I think, in European strategies that freshwater needs to be restored and protected on its own right. Well, of course, there's the Water Framework Directive. I shouldn't say that, but it's, of course, there is habitat types, but there was sort of missing a vision how to deal with river systems as ecological corridors and with the fragmentation of rivers. So we have a goal of 25,000 kilometers of free-flowing rivers restored by 2030, and that's quite a position to take. And now, of course, it needs to be filled with guidance and decisions where to invest the money to make the most use of dam removals and which rivers to reconnect and so forth. But it's a great starting point, maybe a turning point for European river policies. Oh my God. Yeah, this is just for your reference for later. This is the conclusions from the session that I was able to curate 2 days ago, where we screened some films and had expert discussions with scientists and commission members and advocacy representatives. So these are some conclusions about keeping wild rivers wild and what the dam removal challenge looks like. But I won't go into too much detail because most of what I've been saying is reflected in these conclusions. We need to protect those rivers that are still free flowing. And we need to protect them more strictly. And also the strategy here offers some new hopes because the amount of, or the percentage of protected areas and strictly protected areas is to be increased. And for rivers, I think there are different ways of achieving that protection. And it will be very interesting how the Commission is following up on this idea of granting strict protection to rivers against hydropower projects. We've all seen, for example, with the Schwarze Sulm case in Austria, that hydropower could go forward in a place where there was a river in a reference condition, like high ecological status, and still a plant could be built. And so we need better protection. And 2 years ago, last year, I put together an overview where you can, where I presented which countries in Europe have effective, well-working systems in place that can protect selected rivers from hydropower. So these countries are listed here. The Socialist Republic of Slovenia in 1976 was the first state in Europe to grant legal protection to a free-flowing river against hydropower, with the Socha being protected. And Finland, Sweden, Spain have systems in place that are working, and other countries are working on elaborating such protection schemes. Interestingly, these existing approaches are based only on national legislation, and they were established in different decades, and they're rather disconnected from each other. So a European approach seems to be, or is needed, to combine river protection and revitalization more strategically and hopefully build a vision for a network of protected rivers that are really displaying the essential river functions. Oh, this is just a map and some overview, maybe for further reference. And I just said what is written here. An inspiration for such river protection schemes comes also from the US, where 50 years ago, the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act was signed into law. Certain selected rivers shall be preserved in a free-flowing condition and protected for the benefit and enjoyment of present and future generations. This is very similar to the idea that the national park displays. The national parks created in 1872 for the first time in Yellowstone. I think that's a these two ideas combined, especially the national park, is still a great inspiration for conservationists around the world. The Vjosa becoming maybe the first wild river national park in Europe. I think, interestingly, there's something to learn and certainly something to talk about with American friends, and to look at their ways of building this network and establishing more and more protected rivers in the future. Dam removal is happening in the US on a very large scale. There's a phenomenal film about the Elba called Return of the River. I think the poster itself is already quite impressive. And I can tell you this is a very large wall. If you stand up there, I think this is 40 meters high. And it is just incredible to see this river come back to life, and salmon come back upstream, and the whole ecosystem recreating all the way down to the beaches where the sand suddenly is there again for mussels to reproduce and for shellfish to be harvested. It's reconnecting. Yeah, I think I said that. We have maybe with the biodiversity strategy a new prospect for an overarching strategic planning approach, a starting point for that, to build a network of protected rivers. And we need protection schemes because pressures are high and strong. Now, what's the time? Yes, very good. In summary, I would like to say, I could say in summary, I would like to ask a little boy to take you through his 50 favorite aspects, what makes rivers great. And it's a 3.5 minute video that I have to start now. And this is sort of summing up most of the things that I care about. And I hope you enjoy it. And there will be a little finish of the talk afterwards. Finalization. Of course, I'm too slow here. I'm sorry. Yay. Okay, here we go. Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed that. I've seen this film dozens of times and I still love it. And it shows, I think, the essentials of, I guess for many people, what we expect our rivers to look like. So I said before, I think for me, the question is to better understand rivers myself and to get a deeper understanding of the ecology and everything, but also to, I think, change the conversation, how we see rivers as society. It's more than just science. It's a culture of how we treat rivers. We need economy. We need economics. We need ecology. We need engineering. But it is essentially, if we make those decisions as a society, it's a cultural process, of course, and to engage in that conversation and change that conversation is something that I feel is very inspiring and necessary. And those films, as I said, give me a means to engage in this conversation. So we created 4 or 5 years ago with my colleague and friend Michael Bender a format called River Film Fest. This is the poster for the event that never happened because COVID-19 forced us to, on the same day, actually cancel the event. Hopefully we'll do it next year. We had an event in Helsinki, starting our little European tour last year. We went to Helsinki, Szczecin, and 3 German cities. And we presented dam removal examples from Europe, in this case from Estonia, invited people from dam removal to present their work. We did the same now at the Brussels event, and it's just phenomenal to see how people are engaging in these projects and share their visions and their commitment. Now this is our website. Some impressions. It is a very, very colorful thing, of course. Filmmakers take you to places that you would never be able to go, and they tell you those stories that they condensed into maybe 3 or 5 or 20 minutes, and we can share them in a festival format and have a discussion about rivers and river conservation. And it's a, if you will, it's a relaxed format for a very serious discussion because the issues are pressing. But I think it's also inspiring to sit back and look at a film once in a while and reflect in a different way. These were the posters from last year's little tour. And yeah, with that, I would like to come to my conclusion here. And it's the same slide I've introduced in the first half of the talk, or the beginning of the talk. It's all about ecosystem health, dynamics, and free flow. That's what rivers are about. We need to protect these properties or restore these properties in order to get rivers to be what they're meant to be and to provide the ecosystem services that we want to see. And in a way, it's quite simple, but it's never, it's always, there's always more with more details. But my summary is protecting the pathways rivers create and allowing the river to renew itself. That is what river conservation is all about. Thank you for your attention.